hear a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting that was held on November the 10th, 2020.
Motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Williams. Thank you, Commissioner Toby. All in favor? Minutes approved. We got anyone for public comment, Ms. Clerk? Okay, no one for public comment. And if we can start to show up, that would be Director Chris Levitt.
Thank you. Hope you all are doing well tonight. I wanted to just start off going through the programs. There are some general comments, but I'll save those for the specific programs that they're under. That way we'll kind of keep things streamlined, if that's all right. So, Adult Protective Services, they've been holding fairly steady. They got several more reports than normal. They got 7 reports for Protective Services during the month of November. I think there was one day where they got 3 or 4 reports in one day, so that kind of put them in the high gear a little bit because of some of the restrictions and ways they have to go about getting in touch with folks. It kind of takes them a little bit longer, so they're just staying busy, staying on top of things. That's another one of the units, because they're such a small unit, pay attention to their status and their health and trying to keep them separated so they might call around one another all the time in case someone gets sick or needs to go out on quarantine. So, been holding steady there. One of the larger issues I would like to discuss that relates to all the programs is the new MOU agreement that the state's coming out with to change and increase the performance measures of each program. And some of the other counties either are choosing not to sign the agreement, which is more, I guess it's inconsequential. It's more of a statement, I guess, than anything, that they just don't feel like they're engaged with that process. They don't feel like their concerns are being taken into account when that happens. So they just choose not to sign the MOU. They're still going to be held accountable to all the requirements. And then other counties are choosing to sort of send in a signed statement with their MOU that just states their concerns about the agreement and its individual components. So one of the directors from another county sent me his MOU, and I went through it and just kind of looked at where they disagreed with it and some of their reactions, and sort of wanted to bring those to y'all's attention just so y'all can be aware. In the APS MOUs, we'll run right there. The biggest concern is that it doesn't bring into account anything that's outside of the county's control, such as a pandemic where it may be hard for us to have face-to-face contact with somebody when we're trying to do an assessment or something like that. There's just nothing written in the agreement that says certain stipulations can occur where the MOU would relax, meaning certain MOUs will not be held against you. We feel like a clause like that might be worth putting in there just to head off any appeals and a drawn-out process to kind of get that rectified. Another concern is the percentage basis that they use to meet these memorandums is a percentage base. And for a small county like us, if we just have a high number for us is 7 assessments 1 month, well, if one of those doesn't meet the time frame because of something that's outside of our control, it can cause us to fail that month's percentage. So again, it's bringing that back to the state and saying this needs to be a more equitable way of counting how we're doing our work. That we can mess up on one case just like Mecklenburg or any other larger county can. So again, just bringing that to the state's attention and let them know that we're concerned about this not being equitable towards us. But you can see the numbers for Adult Protective Services this month. They largely stay the same, and they're still delivering about the same amount of food boxes to help folks out during this time. If things keep getting locked down more and more, I might see that number increase. That's going back down a little bit more to make sure folks are getting enough feed. And their MOUs for this month, as they are now, are at 100%. And Child Protective Services, we currently have 8 licensed foster homes. The CPS numbers for reports were really down in November, which is kind of good for us to give us a chance to sort of spend some extra time with some of the new workers, get them trained up, and really have more conversation with them. Whitney and Shannon are doing a great job supervising that unit. You can see the other numbers there. There's a little bit more to talk about in CPS, so I won't go through all those numbers. And we still do have 2 open vacancies in the unit. I have 3 main concerns with the MOUs for next fiscal year. One is that there's no built-in contingency for what we call building efforts. Turn my mic on, when we're trying to make contact with a child or with the family, we can't seem to locate them, or the family refuses to allow us access to the child. We're still making what they call building efforts. And we may not make our time frame, but we're doing everything we can to meet that time frame. There's no built-in contingency into the memorandum for that, so we'll bring that to their attention. Same thing with court, like court being out of our control and how many court days we get. That may hold us up with some of the requirements as far as having a child in a permanent place within 12 months. It takes us 3 or 4 months to get into the adjudication phase of the court. And that's what sets the time frame for everything else. So we could throw everything off. And also, one of the bigger ones was repeat maltreatment. There's a couple of different MOUs that have to do with repeat maltreatment. And that's a tricky one because, of course, you want to work with the family and try to help the family resolve issues that led to while we were involved. We can't predict what they're going to do after we close our case and leave their house. Might even fix one problem, but then another problem comes up, and we just feel like that's sort of unfair. I can understand if we want to talk about the same issue. Substance abuse was the issue, and we worked on that for 2 years, and finally got that issue resolved, and then 18 months later, it happens again. But this has to do with any issue. So any time there's repeat maltreatment, or a child that is in foster care comes back into care, even if we go into guardianship with the child, something could happen in that guardianship placement. A guardian could become deceased, a guardian could become ill and not be able to provide care for the child, back into foster care, and we could get into that. So, again, it's just sort of an unfair or lacking contingency to help us present the best work that we can, present the best work that we can. And again, the permanency within 12 months. The 30th district has one of the biggest issues with continuances and getting court cases through timely enough. That's going to probably come down to some sort of legislative action to allocate more resources to the 30th district or reshuffle the 30th district to make it not so big geographically. From what I understand, more attorneys pay attorneys a little bit more to recruit more attorneys for those jobs and be able to give us more time in courtroom to get these cases processed. Another issue that's currently happening in CPS, and I'll pass this around, is there's a lot of discussion going on at the state level right now with mental health as it pertains to children in foster care and children in foster care not being able to receive appropriate services. The children that are in need to be in medical care. questions that they need to get with the mental issues. And so this is just a very sort of informal survey that was put in place with all the 100 counties. I think 93 counties responded. But it just kind of goes through the times that a child in DSS custody, we were not able to find appropriate placement for that child, and the child ended up having to stay in the hotel room or in the DSS building or in another inadequate placement, in which the DSS employees were charged with caring for that child until that bed became available, and what the cost is in that. And this does a good job of laying out what the financial cost of that would be. There's also a huge liability cost. My opinion is that, we're CPS workers and they're trained to do a lot of things, but they're not trained to handle severe mental health and severe behavioral difficulties in children for a 24-hour period. And I think if something happened inside of DSS, it'll not be when something happens inside of DSS buildings in some county or inside a hotel room in some county. That's unfortunately what something will probably happen to help address this. And there's a lot of other counties in different parts of the state that don't have as good a relationship with their NCO or LME like we do with BIAT. And so a lot of the blame kind of gets pushed there, but they're also, getting the screws turned on them with funding big time. So I think they're doing all they can with what they have. So it's going to require a pretty high-level collaborative effort to sort of address this problem. But this is kind of the first step, is just gathering some information, gathering some data to present to say, it's a pretty big financial burden that the counties, the counties have a vested interest. So, at some point when things get a little more organized, I'll probably come to y'all and see about getting a letter expressing your concern, towards this and towards the potential cost reduction. And it's also more about getting the child the help that they need. Because we can't expect a parent to care for a child when they haven't received training or when the child hasn't been getting the treatment that they need. One more policy change in child protective services that's coming out is the way in which we use child medical exams. And child medical exams are typically used for some of the worst physical and sexual abuse cases that we see, particularly if they're going to require criminal charges to be brought against the perpetrator. And what the state's doing is sort of asking us to use them, I guess in a more consistent manner, but it's going to mean us using them more. So they're creating some mandatory circumstances in which we have to get a child seen for a child medical exam. And then they've also created a roster of providers that can perform those child medical exams. So again, it's about trying to provide consistency and I guess cohesiveness of how they get these done and how they're presented in court. But one thing that's going to do is to place a little bit more burden on those providers that are on that roster. Typically, those are done in a child advocacy center, which we don't have in this county. We typically use either Silva or Asheville or Franklin for their child advocacy centers. And child advocacy centers are facing $10 million VOCA, federal VOCA funding shortfall next year, which is going to amount to about a 67% budget cut for local CAC in our region. That's going to be devastating to a lot of the child advocacy centers. They won't survive that. So we're trying to get some letters out to our legislators. This is called out to our legislators to let them know that funding is drastically important to these programs and victim services for our most vulnerable and most hurt children. So that's kind of a double dinger for those folks of being required to do a whole lot less. Again, as things get more organized, and I would like to present a letter for you guys to sign and get out to folks to let them know that they're paying attention to that. Let's see. That's it that I have for child protective services. For the daycare subsidy program, what daycares are open are staying pretty busy. They open and close and shuffle and move and change. The department at the state level has done a really good job of trying to preserve that system for when things do go back to some form of normal, because when people can't go back to work full time and the schools are open full time, then we'll need those daycares. We can't afford for them all to go bust during this time. So they've still been paying providers that are in their system, and they've been paying some bonuses to the workers and centers that have chosen to be able to stay open. So I feel like they've done probably the best job of any of the programs in the state of getting services and resources out to those folks so that they're ready and able when the public needs them again. Child support, just a side note, Pam had a little foot surgery this week, so say a little extra thought and prayer for her. I think she's doing all right. I think she's going to be back in tomorrow. She had to get a little tune-up. Child support's doing well. This is another one of those performance measures that they're going to have to tweak, because if it's based on a percentage, then they're not going to meet their numbers until the end of the year when they've done the collections throughout the year. So they're trying to work out a way to show steady progress through the years instead of waiting until the end of the year to find out if you made your point or not, or made your marks or not. So they're still working on that, I think. And again, there's not as many concerns. I don't think that there's many changes in the MOUs for child support this year. I think they're staying the same. One new case opened in November, so 247 total cases. Food nutrition services, and energy and program integrity. That unit's doing really well. They work with Brianna and get trained and starting to take over some more responsibilities. Everybody that's there is learning really fast and doing good work. Energy's been very, very busy the past week and a half since it started taking applications. So they're dealing with how to take energy applications over the phone and then enter those, and then hopefully you get finished entering those into the system before the phone rings again and you have to start another application. So it's created a different sort of issue. Normally when we would take folks into the office to do the interview, you're doing the interview and you're completing the application at the same time. Now it's just a little bit different. You have to keep it active and go through the phone process. So they're still working on that. They're doing a good job of getting applications processed timely. Food and nutrition staying pretty steady. Again, as far as the MOUs changes, for food, nutrition, energy, and program integrity is the timeliness of processing applications and recertifications may be affected by things that are outside of the agency's control. So there's no contingency set up for licensing now that happens. That's outside of our control. Medicaid is still fully staffed. We got our worker that we were worried about last time qualified. And worked really hard and said, you have to advocate and stay home sometimes, but they were able to see it our way. And she's doing great. All the units doing good. They're home and rolling right along. Again, you've got some folks that are in office, some that are still working from home, and the idea is still to just keep everybody kind of separated and make sure the whole unit doesn't go down at one time. So that seems to be working well. They seem to be in a good groove within that. I'm not going to mess with it until I have to. They're doing some of their some of their recertifications, but not everything just yet, but they are working too hard to get on their recertifications and staying up to date on this. Family and children's, I have a page to add into your packet there. I forgot to include the information on that.
She let me have it.
So, lots of numbers there, but basically it says their average processing time is 3.82 days, and it's required to be 45 days, so they're staying on top of things really well. She's doing a really good job of training the new worker that's hired. And she did a really good job with the audit this year. I think I may have mentioned that last month. Again, she just stepped up and did it, and she's done that on a couple of occasions, so I'm happy with Tiff's progress being the supervisor. As she says in her last sentence there, that communication with CPS is always an issue. When you're a CPS worker, you want always things to contact Medicaid when the case changes. And so they've worked out a system to where they're communicating a little bit more effectively and getting their numbers across to make sure that folks' Medicaid starts and ends in a timely fashion. Again, one of the issues with the Work First, because this is, I think, will be the first year that they have MOUs for Work First, if I'm not mistaken. I think they're adding that this year. And so, again, there's no contingency there for anything that's outside of the control of the agency. Admin, fiscal, NEMT. NEMT is still pretty limited, just due to the nature of doctor visits and how things are going. I'm assuming it's probably going to drop off a little bit more just in the winter time and more restrictions coming on. Melissa's done a really good job working from home. She's got a really good system in place for making sure things are getting processed and paid, and time sheets and day sheets and all that stuff. So she's back up to full speed working from home, doing really well. So real happy with that. We've still got our front lobby closed at this time. Folks can leave their applications at the doorstep. I'll probably reach out to the paper this week and next week just to make sure that folks know when they do those applications. Sometimes we need to call, and so we need to have a valid number, a good number to call folks, and they need to answer the phone when we call them back if they want the services, because we have to have certain information in, and sometimes that's our only means of getting that information completed. So it's important that folks give us a number, and or if they don't hear from us, they call us back and talk to us. On the grander scale, things are rolling right along. I'm just tickled with the crew we've got over there now. They're doing a good job and doing good work. And, I don't hear a lot of complaints. I get some wood in my phone.
On your MOUs, are you gonna sign off on it, or are you gonna send the letter, sign and then send the letter?
We'll sign it and send a letter, I think, because if you just refuse to sign it, you kind of lose your standing.
Is it a mandate? It's not.
It's a mandate. I think the term MOU is it's legal.
Statute.
It's that, okay, so then, it's that, like, he's the big one, anyway.
You won't take it before we sign off on it, before you go with it, so they can see that we're all on.
Sure. Yeah, what I'll do is I'll prepare something and have it ready for the next board meeting and get it signed and turned in. Yeah. I think they just need to be aware that we're not just going to blanket sign something and say, yeah, we'll agree to do that just because it's written that way. It needs to be what it's defined to be is a mutual agreement between the parties to take a course of action, and not a directive. If the directive, follow the directive. Don't say that we sat down and worked out how to do something together when we did.
We started, what, 2 years ago?
Yeah.
when Bush was here, he was on, you know,
He didn't sign it.
I don't mind accountability, I don't mind saying that we need to perform at a certain level, that's not the issue, the issue is what it's called, and it's not an agreement, it's a directive.
Well, the formula is not active between urban and rural counties.
No.
That's our survey of the formula, that's state level.
Right. I mean, what's worse, us messing up one case or Mecklenburg County messing up 75 to get the same percentage, you know, it's just. I was asked, because they're looking at doing, NC Fast for child welfare, bringing about a, case management solution to child welfare, so it can be a uniform process throughout the whole state. Some states started to do that on a pilot basis, and states would quit and told the state they weren't doing it anymore, that it was taking too long, it was ineffective, insufficient, and they just quit and told the state they weren't doing it anymore. And then a couple of the counties that are still using it seem to think it's adequate. So I guess I don't know if I'll develop some sort of reputation for being one to speak up entirely agree with something, or when I have questions about something, I do it in a professional way, I do it in a thoughtful way, but I will speak up. I won't just see something that is harmful to the profession as a whole, to our work and our duty to the public, and just not say anything. That's not what I'm here to do. So they asked me to sit on the committee to look at this NC Fast system and how it's being developed and rolling out. So I don't know a whole lot about it, so I've got a lot to learn. But I think I've got the ability right now to take on something like that and be part of it. I see what I can do.
everything about NC Fast and so wonderful.
I can't imagine as difficult as it's been for folks to do it with something that's as more black and white when you look at the economic benefits side of the house. You know, those are more black and white than say a child protective services case. You've got a lot of gray area. And if you can't make a software system that deals good with black and white, I don't know how you're going to work something out that requires a lot more qualitative data than quantitative data. And, I mean, every day I get, I don't know how many error messages and reports that NC Fast isn't working on this or isn't working on that, or we're having to close it down for this, or there's a help desk because this didn't work today. I mean, it's all day long that I see messages from NC Fast about it being erratic. I just, you know, they're doing the same thing with the practice model for child welfare, where, you know, they've researched and they know what model they want. And I use the analogy that they know they want a Chevy truck, and instead of going to the Chevy dealer and buying a Chevy truck, they're going down to Napa and saying, give me all the parts to build a Chevy truck. And I mean, you can imagine how that's going to work out. That's your key. Mine would look like a Volkswagen. You know, so, and that's kind of what they're wanting to do with this NC Fast system is there are products out there that do the work that they want to do. They work well in other counties in the state that are already using them. You know, the ones that can afford to go out and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on the system. They're using one and it's working great. It's giving them all the data they need. But for some reason, they're sticking with NC Fast and just keep shoving them money. I'll learn about it before I shut it down.
We can bring it over back to us on, okay?
I'll give it a fair shake, but
Put it in there, thanks.
it's got some work to do. Any other
I
questions?
just remember how they can't,
I don't know how they do. I don't know how they put up with it. It's remarkable how fraught it is with errors.
Well, there's a whole bunch of things that they have planned that were rolled out in 2021 that they've already just completely taken out of the picture.
Yeah.
Do they have a contractor developing this software, or are they doing it in-house?
I'm sure it's contracted out, I can imagine. They love contracting stuff out there, consultants, stuff like that.
It's like the DOT and their hurricane forecast plan that you use to design roads with. Yeah.
Family affairs. We should have. Okay. Thank you, Chris.
Any other questions?
Okay.
Chris?
Do I need a motion? Is there anything to close? Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioner Williams. Is there a second? All in favor?